You probably don't know how to use Void. And that's why I'm giving you 15 tips to dominate with Void. Tip number 1. Void does massive damage to a single target, but only a little bit of damage when there are multiple targets. That's why you should almost always try to hit one target only. You shouldn't even try to hit the tower because the Void damage drops significantly. If it's not possible to hit only one target, then you should try hitting 4 targets for maximum value. As you can see, Void does the same amount of damage if there is 2 to 4 targets, which means that 2 targets inside the Void will take the same amount of damage as 4 targets. So if you can't hit one target, try to hit 4. Tip number 2. You can actually do maximum damage to Monk, even if they use the ability. As you can see here, Monk should get an 80% damage reduction when using the ability, but for some reason this doesn't work against Void. This also works against Evolved Knight, which means that you can almost fully counter Evolved Knight with just a Void spell. Tip number 3. You can fully counter a Goblin Barrel with just a Void spell. You need to place it as soon as you see the Goblin Barrel coming towards your tower. Tip number 4. I told you that you should try to hit only one target with the Void spell. But what if the troops are in a group like this and it's impossible to hit just one target? Well, then you can separate the troops like this so the troops are not in a group anymore. Now you can easily take out the balloon with the Void spell because it's not near the Lava Hound. You can use cards like Tornado, Fisherman, and Buildings to separate troops from each other. Tip number 5. The Void spell can fully counter Lumberloon for just 3 elixir. That's a positive elixir trade. Tip number 6. Void is a very good counter for Elixir Collector. It can take out the whole collector with just 3 elixir. But there is a problem. The enemy can place a troop near the collector, so it will block most of the Void damage. To avoid this, place the Void on the edge of the arena. This way, it is literally impossible to block the Void from destroying the collector. You can see here that it's impossible to place troops to block the Void. Tip number 7. You have probably tried predicting your opponent's building with another spell, like Earthquake or Fireball. With Void, predicting is usually not a good idea. Not only does it have a small radius, but if you miss the prediction, you just spent 3 elixir for nothing. With other spells like Fireball, you at least do damage to the tower even if you miss the prediction, so try avoiding doing predictions with the Void spell. Tip number 8. Speaking of predictions, your opponent might try to predict your Void spell and block the damage with another troop. If you think your opponent might do this, wait a couple seconds before playing the Void spell. Tip number 9. Void is a very good counter to every building in the game. It can destroy all the buildings in seconds. It can even one-shot some of them. You should almost always use Void on the enemy buildings. Tip number 10. Void is clearly not the best spell against swarms, but it can still do a decent job against them. You can use it to counter swarms if you don't have anything better. Tip number 11. Void is not the best counter for Graveyard either, but it can deal with the skeletons decently. Use it if you have to. Tip number 12. When trying to finish the tower with Void, you should place your Void unpredictably so your enemy can't easily block the damage. If you always place it at the middle, they can easily predict you and block most of the damage. Tip number 13. You can place your Void between the towers against slow troops like Sparky. Your enemy probably doesn't expect it, so your Void can quickly destroy the Sparky. Just make sure you don't try doing this against faster troops because it's not going to work. They will just run past the Void before it has time to do much damage. You should rather wait until they are in front of the Princess Tower. Tip number 14. You need to learn the perfect timing with Void. If you don't time your Void well, you need to spend more elixir because the Void didn't have time to hit the troops 3 times. The final tip. Know what the Void is capable of. The Void can, for example, one-shot Magic Archer and Mother Witch. To learn more about Void interactions, click this video here.